on the web, and in your hands. This is MDI TV.
Carol Couch was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her first thought, probably not what you'd expect.
When he said we find cancer markers in those nodes, my first thought was finance. I said, I can't do this. I have no money.
She didn't think, am I going to live, or what will surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation do to me? No, she just thought she couldn't pay for it. To her relief, her doctor reassured her that Medicare would cover her bills, and it did. But not everyone is covered, and especially with cancer and other diseases that may require intensive and expensive treatments, the cost of care can bring crushing bills. Some patients even decide to refuse treatment in order to avoid burdening their families. For almost a third of cancer patients, healthcare costs consume 10% or more of their family income. Out-of-pocket costs for low-income patients can wipe out 27% or more of family income. Dr. Sandler says America has reached a tipping point.
The era of healthcare at any cost is coming to an end. I think we all have to, as physicians, take our heads out of the sand and pay more attention to the economics of healthcare.
The results of a nationwide survey of oncologists published in the journal Health Affairs gives a glimpse into how doctors struggle with the costs of the treatments they recommend. Of the 787 oncologists surveyed, 2 out of 3 said every American should have access to care regardless of cost. But at the same time, more than half said the cost of treatment, whether or not it's fully covered by insurance, does influence what they recommend to their patients. And when asked if the out-of-pocket expenses, the ones patients have to pay themselves, influence what they recommend, more than 4 out of 5 doctors said yes. But here's something odd. Although cancer doctors say they consider the cost of different treatment options, less than half say they actually talk about it with their patients. When Lynn Colwell was diagnosed with breast cancer, her doctor did go over her treatment options, all the benefits and the risks.
What he gave me was just clinical studies. If you want to decrease your odds of reoccurrence, this is what you do. And it was just constantly numbers.
But none of those numbers had a dollar sign next to it. Like so many of us, Lynn Colwell said she didn't know how much her health care actually cost until the bills arrived. So how much should doctors think about the cost when weighing treatment options?
I try not to let money get in the way of decision making. Now with more and more treatments and more expenses, we're going to have to figure out how do we best work on things.
Dr. Sandler is a Genentech consultant and conducted clinical trials of its drug Avastin, one of the most prescribed cancer drugs in the world, and an expensive one. On average, Avastin costs around $8,000 a month. Avastin was introduced with great fanfare. The drug can prevent tumors from tricking the patient's body into extending new blood vessels, thus starving the cancer. Clinical trials showed that when combined with chemotherapy, it could add months to the average survival of certain patients with advanced cancers. Then new chemotherapy treatments were developed that seemed to work for many patients with or without Avastin. But hundreds of thousands of cancer patients continue to pay the high price for that drug in the hope that it might help them. In Britain, the National Institute of Health and Clinical Excellence, known as NICE, decided that Avastin didn't produce results good enough to justify its hefty price. Oncologist Dr. Tsang is wary of national decision-making about how much is too much for cancer treatments, even when they have marginal benefits.
If you think about where healthcare costs are, 80 to 90% of healthcare costs are in the last 1 to 2 years of a person's life. You could say perhaps we shouldn't be treating any cancers that have less than 10%, 5-year survival, because that person is not going to be a productive member. But we are not there yet as a society, and nor do I think that we should be. But you can see how far you can take that conversation.
But the Health Affairs study showed many cancer doctors do indeed want to know just how much bang for the buck we get from treatments. 4 out of 5 told the surveyors they want to see more research comparing the effectiveness of different treatments. And 4 out of 5 agreed that the results of cost-effectiveness analyses should be used more often when making coverage and payment decisions. And more research like this is on the way, thanks to a $1.1 billion boost included in last year's federal stimulus bill. But those studies will only be looking at which treatments work best. They won't include cost-effectiveness calculations. Still, even as cancer doctors say they often do look at the price tag before telling their patients which treatment they think is best, the survey results point out just how ill-equipped and uncomfortable many doctors are about including patients in frank discussions of the cost of care.